down, try and breathe. Have a shock, just try and
please help me.
I know, how old's Alice?
She's only 23. I mean, knew this was coming. I was an absolute psychopath.
Alice Ruggles was 24 years old when she realized that the most dangerous words a man like Harry Dhillon could hear were, "It's over." And what makes this case unbearable is that Alice did not miss the signs, did not ignore the danger, did not stay silent, and did not underestimate him. She saw exactly where this was going, said it out loud, documented it, reported it, and still died because obsession was allowed to grow unchecked. Alice met Dhillon in 2016, and the relationship was brief but intense, marked early by behavior that felt wrong rather than romantic. He demanded constant communication, became agitated when Alice was unavailable, and reacted poorly to boundaries, showing a need for control that Alice quickly recognized as a warning sign rather than affection. Trusting her instincts, she ended the relationship, expecting distance and closure, but instead triggering the beginning of a campaign of harassment that would escalate with frightening speed and clarity. Dhillon refused to accept the breakup and immediately began contacting Alice obsessively, sending message after message, calling repeatedly, shifting moods rapidly from pleading apologies to declarations of love to bitterness and rage, sometimes dozens of times a day. And when Alice blocked him, he simply found new phone numbers, new accounts, new ways to reach her, proving that her consent meant nothing to him. Alice soon realized that this was no longer unwanted contact, but stalking, and she told friends and family she was scared, not uncomfortable or annoyed, but genuinely afraid for her life. A fear that sharpened as Dhillon's behavior moved from digital harassment into physical presence. He began appearing near her home, lingering outside, turning up in places he knew she would be, learning her routines, watching her movements, creating the sense that he was always nearby, even when unseen. And Alice described feeling hunted, like her life was being monitored by someone who believed he had ownership over her. Unlike many victims who feel too frightened or powerless to report, Alice did everything she was told to do. She saved messages, recorded calls, took screenshots, kept detailed evidence, and contacted the police multiple times, explaining clearly that Dhillon's behavior was escalating and that she believed he was capable of killing her, a statement that would later feel chillingly prophetic. By the time of her death, Dhillon had sent more than 1,000 messages, many of them obsessive, manipulative, or threatening, revealing a mindset defined by entitlement and resentment, where Alice's independence was treated as betrayal and her refusal to engage was interpreted as cruelty. This pattern, fixation, refusal to accept rejection, escalation from contact to surveillance, is well documented in high-risk stalking cases. Yet despite the volume of evidence and the clarity of Alice's fear, Dhillon was not stopped, and each day that passed appeared to reinforce his belief that there would be no consequences for his behavior. Alice altered her routines, relied heavily on friends, and lived in a constant state of vigilance, knowing that disengagement only seemed to fuel his obsession, but she continued to report and document, clinging to the belief that the system designed to protect her would eventually intervene. On October 3, 2016, the danger Alice had been living under reached its final and most violent stage when Dhillon went to her home in Gateshead, waited outside, and then forced his way inside, turning the place where she should have been safest into the site of a targeted killing. And during the confrontation that followed, Dhillon attacked Alice with a knife and deliberately cut her throat from ear to ear, inflicting a fatal injury from which she died, ending her life not in chaos or accident, but at the conclusion of a long, clearly signposted escalation of stalking and control. There was no mystery about how this happened, and no sudden loss of control. This was an intentional act carried out by a man who had spent months refusing to accept that Alice was not his to command. After killing her, Dhillon fled the scene, but the evidence of his guilt was overwhelming, and he was arrested later the same day, carrying with him not only physical evidence, but a digital trail that mapped the entire progression from rejection to obsession to murder. When the case reached court, the story that emerged was devastating precisely because of its clarity. Hundreds upon hundreds of messages, repeated attempts to contact and monitor Alice, explicit threats, and a complete inability to accept her autonomy, all pointing to a mindset that viewed violence as a solution to lost control. Prosecutors described Dhillon's behavior as a textbook example of coercive obsession, explaining how he framed Alice not as an independent person, but as something he was entitled to possess, and how her decision to end the relationship was interpreted by him as an injustice that needed to be corrected. Alice's family spoke about her fear, her courage, and the countless times she asked for help, describing a young woman who followed advice, trusted authorities, and still paid with her life, making it impossible to argue that this was unpredictable or unavoidable.
Alice was one of these people who always had a smile on her face.
She knew the things that were going to make people feel happy.
She always understood what you were thinking, what you were doing. She always knew the right thing to say.
He took her to places.
He bought her presents.
He was trying very hard.
He was a real gentleman.
It didn't seem malicious at the time.
As the relationship moved on, strange things started happening. She started to lose friends.
He used all sorts of things to persuade her she didn't have enough money, she shouldn't go out.
She started to lose weight. She started to lose self-confidence.
She'd had to talk to him constantly.
In 2017, Harry Dhillon was convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 22 years. A sentence that acknowledged the seriousness of the crime but could never account for the months of terror Alice endured, or the future she was denied. The impact of the case rippled far beyond the courtroom, igniting national outrage and forcing difficult conversations across the UK about how stalking cases are handled, why victims are often required to endure escalating threats before decisive action is taken, and how obsession is still minimized until it turns lethal. Alice's family refused to allow her death to be reduced to a headline, speaking publicly about the failures that allowed Dhillon's behavior to continue unchecked and campaigning for stronger protections for stalking victims, determined that Alice's warnings would not be ignored forever. Today, the Alice Ruggles case stands as one of the clearest and most painful examples of how stalking is not romance, persistence, or heartbreak, but a dangerous pattern of control that can end in murder. And what makes her story so haunting is not just how she was killed, but how clearly she saw it coming, how loudly she tried to stop it, and how devastating the consequences were when those warnings were not acted on in time.